Hi, welcome everyone. In this demo D2.2 Privacy and Users Control module. In this demo, we'll show a scenario where a data consumer needs to process the personally identifiable data but do not use Apka system directly. We provide a solution to generate the consent form and request the consent from the data provider. In addition, data consumer can also specify use case specific constraints or conditions. This solution can also be integrated with the good flows during the data processing workflow phase. For example, when consent is needed during the pre-action phase. Let's have a look into the demo. See the demo of the functionalities that is provided by the preview UI of this version, the first version. Before you are able to see any functionalities, you need to be a registered user of type either data controller or data provider. The data controller or data processor can also be referred to as data consumer and data provider as data subject in GDPR terminology. So those terms will be used interchangeably in this video. The first step is to register. I'm skipping this part because it's very straightforward. By default, the user is registered as a data provider, and the super admin needs to change it to the type data consumer. Let me log in first by the data provider or data controller or processor. Different functionalities have been provided. The data controller or processor can upload the ontology of different types: general, domain ontology describing their domain, and data schema ontology from their domain. And they can view the uploaded ontology. I have already uploaded two ontology, domain ontology and data schema for the Nisatec. By default, we use DPB and ODRL as general ontology. So there's no need to upload general ontology unless you are going to use your own ontology. You can also send the configure consent request, which at the moment is empty because we don't have any. And you can also view the response from the data provider, like whether they have given consent to the request that you have made. Let's configure the consent request. Let's start by giving the name, Opcast demo, consent request. As I said before, we use DPB and ODRL as default ontology, so there's no need to select, and we haven't uploaded any ontology of this type. That's why you do not see any option. Let's select the other one and proceed to the next step. The data requested by the ID is by default taken from the registered user of type data controller or processor or data consumer. And then we can specify the kinds of data that we wanted to use or and perform any data processing operation. Purpose, let's say academic research, and the starting date. Specify the months in duration, how long you want to collect or perform any processing on the data that you are requesting for. It says the data processing operation has not been selected. So we need to select data processing operations that we wanted to apply. We have different data processing operations from the general ontology as well as the domain ontology. For example, the statistical analysis. Let me select all for the time being and proceed to the next step. Now we can specify additional constraint. This is a use case specific constraint other than the consent from here, which is required because of the GDPR. Let me select some additional constraint. Let's say machine learning prediction, and the count should be, I don't know, less than 30. We can add more. System should be equal to Windows. And let me add these two for the time being. You can add as many as you like and then submit. Now we have successfully configured the consent request or consent request form that can be sent to the user. Let's see. We can view status is created. And then we see an option to send to the user. These are the user of type data provider. Whenever we click on send to user, the request is sent to all the users that have the matching data that we wanted to use, which is available in their data information, which we'll see in a moment. Let me send it to all. Now the status has been changed. Request has been sent to all, like to the users, and deletion is not allowed. We can still see this empty page here for the consent response. This is because we have just sent it to the user. We have not received any response. Now let me log in as a data provider. The data that will be matched that I was talking a while before is this data information. This user has marked all the data he's interested in sharing, and this is what we use to match with the data controller request and in order to send the request. Now let's see if we have received any request. Yes, we have received a request. Let me grant the consent and give permission to one of the use case specific conditions or constraints. Let me give it, and the user has responded and given the consent. If we go back to our other view, this was empty. Let me refresh it. We see the response. Now we can see the ODRL response. Since consent was given, we have it as a permission, and we have prohibition and also for one of the options. Now let me go back to the user. I can close this. Now the user can revoke the consent. Let's say the user is not happy and say, I'm no longer interested in whatever request you are making. I'm not happy, therefore I'm revoking the consent. Once revoked, status has been updated and the user is only able to view the response that he has given. Thank you. These are the functionalities provided by the first version of Preview UI.
Now, we will look at the producer side. A data producer may want to specify roles and define additional usage constraints, such as commercial considerations or geospatial constraints on data they own, and then wish to publish in a data marketplace. Furthermore, a data consumer, such as the one from the previous demo, may change the role to a producer if they wish to sell on a data marketplace data for which individuals have given consent of further sale. We note that this tool can be used in isolation without the need for a user account. This is a demonstration of our tool for the creation of rules in PrivUI. We expect this tool to be used by users who are informed of the representation of data policies in standard formats such as ODRL. There is no need to register or log in to use this tool, so let's head to the page. As you can see, this is a form that contains a few drop-down menus and a text input whose values will be used to create a policy following the ODRL standard. The first drop-down menu is the type of rule, which can be either a duty or obligation, a permission, or a prohibition. Then we choose the actor who is bound to the rule we are creating. These come from the Data Privacy Vocabulary, or DPV. Then we choose the action, which contains several common data operations that are defined in ODRL. Then we must specify the target of this rule. Then we select the general purpose to which this rule applies. These purposes come from DPV and denote several purposes that have been identified in GDPR. Finally, we may add or remove any number of additional constraints to the rule. These may have to do with the date from which this rule is upheld, or the geospatial location. So let's say we say that this rule applies for dates greater than 2020 December the 12th. Then we add the rule, and the rule is created and stored in this text area in the JSON-LD format. So now for a more concrete example. Let's say that we wish to give permission to a third party to share our dataset for the purposes of customer management. And we say that this can only start after 2023, October 10th, and in the area of the United Kingdom. So we add the rule, and here we can see our previous permission, as well as this additional one, where we can see the action sharing assigned to a third party, the purpose is customer management, the constraints, etc. Finally, we want to show a scenario where we instead want to forbid an actor of executing a particularly query over a dataset. So we make a rule that is a prohibition for, let's say, a parent of a data subject of executing. So this will pop up a text area where we can specify the query that we don't want the user to answer. So let's say we select everything from doctors and patients where the age of the patient is under 18. So we specify again the name of our data set. And let's say for the purposes of marketing, we won't add any additional constraints. So now we add the rule, and we can see all of our previous permissions, and then this prohibition where we specify this particular query. Finally, there's a clear button. So if we want to start over, this just clears the text area.